بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ولي المؤمنين وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله سيد ولد آدم أجمعين وبعد. We'd like to welcome each and every single one of you back to Beyond Ramadan. This week we're going to be talking about spiritual fitness, right? When we say spiritual fitness, what are we talking about? What does that even mean? Well, today that's what we're going to discuss. But there was that stupid movie, A Cure for Wellness, right? I didn't even watch it. The title sounded too dumb. A Cure for Wellness is an older movie, like at least 5 years old at this point. But we're going to come up with a similitude for wellness, right? A method or an analogy or a similitude, was struck that the Prophet ﷺ had put forward when he gave an example of the strong believer and the weak believer. The hadith is in Sunan at-Tirmidhi, and we're familiar with the hadith. Some of us, we've heard it at one point in time. Normally, whenever we hear this hadith, the main part that we normally focus on is normally this part here, right? If something bad happens to you, if any musibah, if any calamity overtakes you, then don't say, if only I had done something else. If only something else had taken place, if only I did this, if only I did that. Rather say, Qadarullah wa ma shafa'at. Qadarullah wa ma shafa'at. Allah has decreed and He does what He wills, right? And then the hadith continues because the phrase out or low is the word that's used in the hadith. But the word is someone who says, if only. This only opens the way, it does fath, it opens up the way for the amal of shaitan, the actions of shaitan, for his work to kick in. So normally when we hear the hadith, this is the part that we focus on, right? And maybe every now and then you'll hear some commentary on this part. The strong believer is more beloved to Allah than the weak, but there is goodness in both. There is goodness in both. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he goes on to tell us some things about what we should be as believers, whether you're weak or strong. You need to be eager for what benefits you, for the things that bring khair, that brings fawaid, that brings goodness and benefits to your life. You should be eager for that. And seek the help from Allah, right? Do the isti'ana, iyyaka na'bud wa iyyaka nasta'een. That isti'ana that Allah talks about in the 4th ayah of Surah Al-Fatiha. Be always seeking the help of Allah Jalla Jalal. And do not be ta'jir. Now ta'jir in the hadith, you'll see that it's translated a few different ways. But if you were to just take ta'jir at its fundamental meaning, it means don't be incapable. Don't be incompetent. But it also means don't get frustrated. But it also means don't become relaxed. Don't be lazy. And then that's where we get this age-old nasiha. If something bad happens, don't say, if only I had done this or that. Don't be regretful, but rather say, when we're talking about the past, Qadarullah wa ma shafa'at. Qadarullah wa ma shafa'at. Because if you start to say, if only this, if only that, if only this, if only that, then you're opening up the door for shaitan. And we use this hadith as a beautiful segue and bridge to what we discussed last week, knowing the work of shaitan, right? But this week's focus, the top of the hadith, strong believer versus the weak one. Now, Imam al-Nawawi, when he was giving commentary on this hadith, he says what it means by it opens you up for the work of shaitan. It means that he casts the heart into opposition against what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had decreed, and then shaitan, he begins to work on you based on that regret. If only I had done this, if only things went like that, if only COVID wasn't in, if only I didn't have to go to school online, my grades would have been much better. If only, the COVID didn't shut down the business, if only, I was able to drop these submissions before this such and such happened, and if only, just regret. I wish I did. I wish I was in school. I wish I went for my master's. I wish I, regret, opens the door for shaitan to begin to work on. So here's the Arabic of the hadith, but I just want to ask you all a couple of questions. First and foremost, in the chat, humor me for a moment as we open up this discussion. I got to start at the bottom and then we climb the mountain together, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. What does it mean when you hear the strong believer? Al-mu'minu al-qawwi. Al-mu'minu al-qawwi, what does that mean to you? You can raise your hand if you want. Al-mu'minu al-qawwi. Many use this hadith to talk about physical strength. Okay, that's a good observation. I've actually, I've heard people say the strong believer, and they talk about physical strength, is better than the weak believer, but I've never heard someone say it like explicitly. I've never heard like an alim say this hadith is talking about strong people, like physically strong. Someone who hears and obeys. Anam, why do you say that? Why is that what you derive from it? Steadfastness on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being strong against the desires of the nafs. Now we're starting to get a little mystical, mashallah. The one that is better able to resist temptations and not give in. Based on what in the hadith is that what we're talking about? Because, all right, let me just humor you for a second. Because I assume when you say this is the characteristic of al-mu'minu qawi, is that the opposite of what you're defining. The opposite of what you're defining is a weak one. So a weak Muslim is not able to resist temptations and not give in, as Sister Rida had said. And a weak Muslim is not steadfast upon the path of Allah and is not strong against the desires of their nafs, as Ali had said. And according to Madina, many use the hadith to talk about physical strength. So that means that a weak Muslim, you know, with your scrawny arms and your weak little legs, is not as good as one with you know, popping calf muscles and veins, you know, that pop out, you know, when they talk. It's like they neck flexes when they speak, you know? Someone who hears and obeys. That means that a weak Muslim does not hear and obey. So Anam gave a ta'wil. She gave an explanation. They have submitted to Allah's commandments and tries their best to seek His pleasure. So a weak Muslim doesn't do that. Does anyone know why I'm pointing this out? Can anyone point out why I'm pointing this out? Yasser said, those who integrate qiyam into their lives could be considered stronger than the believers that do the bare basics. Okay, so now we're talking about like levels in worship. And Yasser even pulled this back from our Ramadan Reloaded class, right? When we started to talk about qiyam al-layl, and Allah even gave that similitude in the Quran. Don't think that the person who prays qiyam is like the one who does it. And don't think the one that doesn't do it, don't think that y'all are the same. You're not the same. Allah made that dichotomy in the Quran. People who pray qiyam al-layl are not like the ones who don't. But does that mean that a strong believer prays qiyam al-layl? Has anyone figured out why? I can't read that out loud, highly. But it was funny. It was a good callback. Sister Maddie said, does this actually mean mental emotional strength? Hence the reference to laziness and frustration? I like how you're trying to connect these two different pieces together like that. Now let's hear from someone else. If you want to raise your hand and give an answer, as long as you don't take more than 25 seconds, we can let you go, inshallah. But let's hear from you all. A believer who is consistent in both his or her habits ensures the development of strength in his or her iman. Brilliant answer by Q Anonymous. That's a brilliant answer. Barakallahu feekum. But have you figured out why I'm using the answer that you give? Because a believer who is consistent in both their habits ensures the development of the strength of their iman. Does that mean that a weak one is not consistent and that a weak one is not developing the strength? Is that what makes them weak? Raise your hand if you know why I'm pointing this out. So raise your hand if you know. Okay, maybe we don't. Anyone? All right, I'm gonna highlight it for you right here. Well, I won't do it in there. Sorry. But there's goodness in both. You see? So how can you think that the Muslim who is not steadfast or the Muslim who is not consistent, how can there be any good in a believer that's like that? Now, a few of you pointed out something that's very important when it comes to this hadith. Allah does not, or the Prophet ﷺ is not defining a Muslim here. The Prophet ﷺ is describing a mu'min. And the difference between a Muslim and a mu'min is Muslim is referring to one who does taslim. We're talking about submission. But mu'min, we're talking about characteristics of iman. These are faith. This is a matter of the heart. It's a matter of what's within. Now, obviously, the iman makes itself evident in the taslim, right? But sometimes a person may have a heart full of iman, but they don't do as much taslim, even though, I mean, it's relative, it varies, that's my point. They put a lot into what they do, even if it may not, in terms of quantity, be as much as someone who does much, but their heart does not have as much iman, right? The strength of iman and the decree of Allah, if you know, I like the fact that you're taking portions of the hadith and using it to explain each other, because that's a really important thing when it comes to hadith. Looking at the beginning parts and then comparing it to the middle and comparing it to what comes after. That's a really good point. But let me ask you something. Based on what are you describing the strength or the weakness? Like what are you saying here? Or what do you, based on how many times you've heard this hadith, some of you may have heard this hadith many, many times, right? Where is the definition of strength and weakness here? And if, according to the answers that we got before, if there's goodness in both, well, how can there be good in both? Does anyone know? It's okay. Let the answers flow. It's good. I know this is going to be recorded. Maybe for the one who watches the recording, it's good, but I prefer to interact, you know, so, and read your interactions. Inshallah, the person who watches, they benefit from it too. So tell me, what is the description of strength here? What is the description of weakness here? And how can there be good in both? Let's just get a couple of answers. Our strength fluctuates, says Anonymous. Okay, that's true. But there is kind of a working definition on like the dichotomy that indeed the strong believer is better than the weak one. So it's not saying the believer is sometimes strong and sometimes weak. It's saying some believers are really strong, some are just weak, right? Strength is defined by lack of ta'ajjud. Okay, all right, now we started to get really deep. So without ta'ajjud. Sorry, I put raw. It's just a little. Thank you for pointing that out. Ta'ajjud, my bad. So the ta'ajjud here that's mentioned, my bad. That's a zay. All right. The ta'ajjuz that's mentioned here, right? The less that you have of it, well, the stronger you would be. I like that. I like that line of thinking. The weak continues to go back to Allah. Oh, that was a good answer. It's not the answer I was thinking of, but that's a really good answer. The weak believer is good because the weak believer keeps going back. They believe still, right? That answer made me smile really big. That's a really good answer. Of course, there would be good in both because they both believe, right? It's not saying one has less iman than the other, but the weak believer is still doing something. That's why there's good in both, right? I like that answer. It's a great answer. Barakallahu feek. Just don't send the answer with a question mark at the end because you put the weak continues to go back to Allah, question mark. That's in the answer, right? Mashallah, Mansoor said the brain's not working. May Allah help it work. I mean, strength is being content with the decree of Allah regardless of whether it aligns with our plans, desires, etc. That's true. So what then defines weakness? Is it the opposite? So we have the description of strength based on the rest of the hadith. It is exhorting us to certain behaviors and telling us to refrain from certain behaviors. True. But why then would there be good in the weak one? Too hard? Too much? Too much interaction? All right. I'll dial it back, inshallah. We'll respect the raised hand, inshallah. So now let's take a moment to do a psycho-spiritual analysis. Does our perceptions really match the reality of what it means to be strong and weak? Because normally whenever we take this analogy of the weak believer and the strong believer, but there's khair in both, we do one of two things. We project what it means to be strong and weak based on ourselves onto others, or we project what we perceive to be strong and weak from others onto ourselves. And our sister said, weakness would be to struggle to achieve that contentment with the decree, but accepting it nonetheless. So this kind of goes into the concept of doing things for Allah's pleasure or doing what Allah commanded out of patience. There's a divide even in ibadah. Some ibadah is done in sabr. It's done purely in patience. It's hard to get up for Fajr. It's hard to fast the month of Ramadan. It's hard to pay zakat, or it's hard to even think about making hajj. For some people, their worship is in sabr, but they're rewarded for doing it out of sabr. But then for some people, they do the pleasure with rida. They do it with pleasure. They do the worship with pleasure. So for them, it's not a matter of getting up for Fajr is hard. It's, I love waking up for Fajr. And they are rewarded for doing it because Allah pleases them. So could you then say that the strong believer does it with pleasure, but the weak one does it with sabr? Well, not necessarily. We wouldn't derive that from this hadith. But this is a distinction that some of the ulama had made between how people approach worship. I gotta put my foot in the sink, get this over with. You're just doing the wudu out of sabr. But then for other people, like the way water fills between my toes, get that pinky, and you get your pinky in between your toes, and you're like, having a good time. Anyways, our perception of what it means to be spiritually strong, it varies a great deal. And like we said earlier, you project your perception of what it means to be spiritually strong onto others. And you project what you perceive to be strong from others oftentimes onto yourself. But is how we think about spiritual strength and how we think about spiritual weakness, does it match the reality of what it really means to be spiritually weak or to be spiritually strong? That's the question that we have to ask ourselves. Otherwise, we won't know what it means to be spiritually fit. So let's look at the dichotomy between spiritual fitness and physical fitness. Well, let's look at the image of beauty. Beauty in today's society is being super, super thin. The image of beauty for women in the West, at least, is super thin. If you go to certain parts of the world, it's being very fair-skinned. And while you may not believe this, in certain parts of the world, it's also being very dark-skinned. It's ironic. Is it really ironic? But here in the United States, being tan is better than being pale, right? In some European countries where it's predominantly Caucasian Americans, dark-skinned people are seen as more attractive than fair-skinned people. Go to subcontinental Asia, and you have this thing called Fair and Lovely, where people take this cream and put it on their skin, trying to lighten up their complexion. Someone said PTSD. I like it, but say. So yeah, even though you born from the same tribe as these people, your generations go back ages, but you a shade darker, and that suddenly makes you less attractive. So the image of beauty, it does vary from place to place, but the physique, right? What is seen as physically beautiful is also what goes into the image of physical fitness, and why people, in some cases, want to lose weight, why they want to exercise. Like bros want to get big because, being big body, John Cena, RKO off the top ropes, Dwayne, The Rock Johnson, veins popping out your neck, Allah knows what they have to shoot up to be that big, that's like an image of like what it seems to be attractive to men. So they get their creatine shakes and they kill themselves trying to get big. But if you're not shooting what they shooting, you normally ain't gonna get it. There's an entire documentary about how actors take steroids in order to get ripped, right? So even the image of beauty for men is oftentimes a bit delusional, because most people will not take steroids just to look good for other than the camera, right? And of course with women in today's society, especially when we deal with its own, it's like its own type of pandemic, the hypersexualization of not just kids through what they're exposed to, but the hypersexualization and the projected image of women within the society of what it means to be attractive. The less you wear, the more beautiful you are. This is a big issue. But then by showing less of the female, or by showing as much of the female form as possible, it projects, if your body does not look like this, if you do not walk this way, if you don't move your lips this way, or like if you don't have these characteristics as a woman, you are not feminine, you are not beautiful, you are not attractive. So that image of beauty is a very, very deep thing, right? Because when people are pursuing physical fitness, they're chasing an image of beauty, a standard of beauty based on their culture, based on their nurturing, right? Now juxtapose that with the image of what it means to have faith. What is the image of spiritual beauty, right? Is it somebody who wears a thobe? Is it someone who wears a abaya? Is it a sister who wears all black? Is it a brother who wears all white? Is it, wearing half of the hijab on with some hair showing? Is the image of a beautiful Muslim, and now we're talking about how it physically looks, because the mu'min who is strong versus the mu'min who is weak, it also deals with physicality too, which we're going to talk about that more. It's not necessarily just about the game, it's about some other stuff too. But what we consider, when I see you, what makes me think that you are a beautiful Muslim, regardless of gender, regardless of attraction? What makes me think your Islam is visually appealing, right? We remember, if you recall from the Ramadan Reloaded class, we talked about how Hassan al-Basri, he said, I'm amazed at how Allah illuminates the light, illuminates the faces of the people who pray at night. And how we had someone who was struggling with acne. We said, hey, look, this is what Hassan al-Basri said. Try praying Qiyam al-Layl. Inshallah, it will be the clear cell you need. And mashallah, tabarakallah, as they started praying Qiyam, their skin cleared up, right? And don't think that, oh, Brother Isa, your face is light. I got a light in my face, and I got a little filter on my mouth. So yeah, the image of Iman. How do we see someone as spiritually beautiful? Or is it only skin deep? Is it a matter of practice? I always see them at the masjid, mashallah, the image of beauty. Man, subhanAllah, I always see her. She's always, teaching Quran, and she's always volunteering. She's very active. Is that the image of what beautiful Iman looks like? What about trendy diets? Juxtaposed, how many trendy diets has there been? I'm going to try to mention 3 off the top of my head. One of them, you probably, also the concept of Photoshop. Yeah, that's real too, especially in the internet, where everyone, let me stop. We got a special class on the internet, inshallah. It's coming, don't worry. I'm gonna try to name 3 trendy diets. We have keto, that's easy. We had South Beach diet. You're like, how old are you? And then we had I'm not going to use Slim Fast. You would have had to have been born in the 90s to even know what that is or care. What was the other thing? South Beach diet and Weight Watchers. Just like how we have trendy physical diets, we have trendy spiritual diets. Oh, have you heard of Sheikh so-and-so? He's so awesome. Wow. And you just get on the train of that famous Sheikh so-and-so until a new famous Sheikh comes in. He's so cool. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, have you heard of Ustadh so-and-so? The Sheikh? Oh my God, she's so blah, 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 until the next Sheikh comes. Oh, this new class is so awesome. It's so good. Trendy. You're trending. It's trending, so you're in it. As long as it's trending, as long as it's hype, as long as it appeals to you. I just opened a timeout like that. Then you get into it. Also, trendy spiritual diets. Black Lives Matter. Yeah, Black Lives. It's trending, so you're in it. You're into it as long as it's trending. Oh, let's feed the needy, everybody. Let's just feed the needy right now. This is this cool thing that's happening. So you do it too. So even activism and movements and participation within the community can be like a trendy diet. Don't worry, we're going somewhere with all of this. Gym memberships and exercise routines kind of become trendy too. Yeah, bro, I train to failure. Bro, deadlifting is the way of the future, man. If you can't deadlift, you can't anything. Yeah, I just got into running. Yeah, I just got the new Nike Runs 3.0. Yeah, I'm totally a runner now. Yeah, I got New Balances. People, they get into stuff like this. You trying to come through? You trying to hang out? No, I gotta go to Lifetime. Okay. You know, people talk about having gym memberships like it's a badge of honor. Oh yeah, my gym is like unprompted. We didn't even say anything about gyms. Like, why are you talking about your gym membership? Right? And you can juxtapose that with Muslim gatherings, stuff that Muslims just get into and that they have to talk about. Yeah, well, you know, at this one class that I was in, they're like, brother, we're not even talking about Islamic classes. You just brought it up. I guess it's trending. Or yeah, me and my friends, my friends and I and us and we and my Muslim friends and so then the cliques become the trend, the thing that you brag about, the thing that you talk about. It's like how having that, gym membership or doing this new exercise routine. I just started P90X. I'm doing Insanity. It makes you feel good. So if we're talking about a dichotomy between physical fitness and spiritual fitness, what then would be the dichotomy between spiritual and physical unhealthiness? Well, you know, eating fast food, junk food, and high carb diets is not good for you. Like legit, it'll kill you, right? So then we kind of come up with this whole balanced spiritual diet. Well, you know, I just prayed a shot in Jama'ah, so I guess I'll spend the rest of the night just binge watching Netflix. That's junk food. That's unhealthy for you. You're undoing the good that you had, brother. It's all about balance. That's why I volunteer on Tuesdays and do absolutely nothing on Wednesdays. I got my little Friday class that I'm going to go to. And then for the rest of the night, I'm just going to do absolutely nothing, bro. It's like, that's not healthy. It's like fast food, junk food, high carbs. But we play it off as this is being balanced. I have fun and, oh, mashallah, walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I have fun and I worship Allah. That's not the same as I waste time and then sometimes I do stuff for Allah, right? Or, you know, eating junk but working out. Some of us are like, hey, alhamdulillah, you know, I read Quran. And then I listen to the new Drake album. It's like, come on, man. You can't put that junk in your ear and then be like, yeah, but you know, I have a deep relationship with the Quran. I recite every day. I read Jews a day. I love J. Cole. Like that's the wrong idea. You don't eat a bunch of junk and then go to the gym and work out. Or, yeah, man, I'm really taking these classes seriously. I'm studying Usul Hadith right now. I'm going through it with the chef, and I'm trying to get my girlfriend to join too. It's like that's not how that works. No more than you go to cookout, chug a milkshake, then you know, go to In-N-Out. I'm going from East Coast to West Coast here. Get you some wild style French fries, and then you go to the gym and run for 30 minutes. Like that's not how that works, right? Also, a testament to unhealthiness is sedentary work. If your job is sitting all day, or you spend 8 hours in school sitting all day, or because school is online, you spend, you know, 10 hours in front of a computer screen and laying in your bed, you know, sometimes we have this lounging and sitting approach when it comes to Islam. I don't feel like getting up. Yeah, I'm just, you know, just like real lazy. Quick to get out of the worship that you're doing and slow to get up to do it. And then the last thing I think I put, yeah, it's the physical inactivity, which is different than, you know, sedentary work where you're doing it, but you're approaching it in a way to where it's like you're barely doing it, right? You're not moving, you're just getting enough done. But then to be physically inactive, to just be sitting in the house all day, to not get a little bit of sun on your face, to not, you know, focus in on some things that are good for you, that you know, keeps you active. This stuff can affect your mind. You wonder why you're depressed. You wonder why your body aches and you're 17 years old and, oh, my back. It's because you're probably just sitting around doing a bunch of nothing all day. The most movement that you have is in your thumbs. Your thumbs are getting biceps in them, but you're experiencing muscular atrophy from doing absolutely nothing. You see it in your physique. You see it, and you go up the stairs and you get tired, right? Just like how these things have an impact on your anxiety, have an impact on your level of patience, have an impact on your happiness. The same thing happens for spiritual inactivity. I haven't touched the Quran since Ramadan. Well, no wonder you're stressed out. No wonder you're sad. No wonder you're depressed. And this translates all to the soul, which is kind of the bigger point that we're getting to. So to answer the question, how can both be good? It's because strength and weakness are relative. And this hadith actually points that out. And when we look at some scholarly statements, we see that to be true. Imam al-Nawawi in his Sharh al-Muslim, his explanation of Sahih Muslim, he said a strong believer refers to a believer who has firm determination and is inclined to the affairs of the hereafter. A person with a strong determination will approach the enemy in jihad, as you know they used to do, or search for the enemy with vigor. Unlike the lazy one is just gonna be like, I don't see him, I don't see anybody. Can we just go out? That's a different type of approach. He will also be extremely determined to enjoin the good and forbid the evil, to endure all types of difficulties while carrying out the above by being firm upon the deen. So it's the strength of Iman that's spurring them on. Similarly, they will show that more inclination towards salah, towards fasting, towards remembering Allah, to all the acts of worship. Now, does that mean that the person who is showing that level of inclination is someone who is physically strong? Or does it mean that they have spiritual strength? Because it's a big difference, right? Another explanation is the criterion for a strong believer is to be more beloved in the sight of Allah because they carry out more ibadah. If you're physically strong but weak in ibadah, then a believer who is physically weak but strong in ibadah will be more beloved in the sight of Allah. So now you see, it's not just what you see with your eyes, right? It's also what you're doing. Because you may see somebody, they may not be in the best shape. They may not be physically imposing. But when it comes to their strength with Quran, I was talking with our sheikh earlier, and we were just talking about, the notion of speaking about Islam. And he was saying how like if you in academic circles, if you challenge someone to just speak in Arabic about a matter or just about any masala of the deen, just talk about it in Arabic, no yani Arabic, just pure Arabic, they would be hard pressed to do it because it requires a certain type of stamina to be able to speak in clean, crystal, crunchy Arabic about like a masala or to even explain something without your yani Arabic, that type of Arabic. But then he said something really interesting, which is something that I've always found to be like, it's like a great benchmark, He said, and if you ask some people who speak about the deen, just recite 2 ajza, no mistakes, no need to be corrected. They may be hard pressed to do it. Because even when you sit with the mushaf in your hand and you get to third of the page, you start to yawn. It's because that spiritual stamina is really, really weak. So sometimes you may see someone, they're not physically imposing, but their spiritual strength is very, very strong. And this also applies to patience, right? It also applies to hikmah. Some people, they may be, very, very weak when it comes to their anger, but they're very, very strong when it comes to their wisdom. And so you can see that the strength and the weakness is actually relative. But because we're talking about Iman, we're talking about the characteristics and the features of someone who believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So spiritual fitness is both different from, but also tied to physical fitness. See, some commentators of this hadith have explained that strength is referring to physical strength. So some commentators, they did explain it this way, but not in the context of they can lift more things. They said, as such, a person who is stronger, they'll be able to perform longer raka'at. They'll be able to fast and not feel fatigued. They'll be able to make hajj and they're not going to be destroyed. Or, as they used to do, they would be able to fight and defend Islam, right? Now, but is that the case? Is that the case necessarily for a person who's strong? Sometimes you have people who are strong, but they can't do any of that because they don't have high spiritual stamina. So we have to look at spiritual fitness plans. What does keto diet look like for your iman? Yo, you got to drop the carbs. You got to change your diet. You got to burn the fat. And as anyone knows, it's not enough for you to just work out to become fit. You also have to change how you eat. And as anyone knows, it's not just about changing your diet. That's not how you become physically fit. You also have to be physically active. So keto normally works for people who put both together. They change it, like it works, it has the most profound results on people, and you can look up a million stories of people. By the way, your body's not meant to stay in ketosis. You just use it for a period of time so that you can get your thing going. But it's both. You see the most profound results in people who apply the physical side with the diet side. And as you know, intermittent fasting is a new thing, but for us in the deen, we've been had this. We've always had fasting. And the intermittent fasting of water fast and all this other stuff, like our sister man mentioned, water fasting. Do the fast of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Try the fast of Dawood alayhi salam. I told you guys before when we were talking about sincerity that there was a brother that I knew, man, he was firm upon the fast of Dawood, but the more he told people about it, the less he could do it. Because it's more than just being able to like know when to eat and not to eat, to take a day on and to take a day off. Allah has to give you spiritual stamina for that. When you got hasad and ayn and your niyyah gets corrupted, it becomes very, very difficult. Because fasting, true fasting in the deen is more than food and water. It's a fast of the mind, it's a fast of the tongue, it's a fast of the heart. People who fast, how do you see the effects of it on them? We just finished a month of fasting. It hasn't even been a month yet. And do you remember the results of how you felt at the end of the month of fasting? Even if you struggled through the entire month, you felt something, right? It's because it gives you a different type of spiritual stamina. The results are in the taqwa. The results are in the iman. The results are in their ibadah. That's why that month of Ramadan becomes what's it called? It becomes a marathon. You swimming, you sprinting. What else do they do in marathons? Yeah, you're doing all that stuff. You're rowing, the whole nine, right? Now, what about fitness plans like exercise routines? P90X, Insanity. I'm pretty sure I saw a couple of days ago CrossFit got canceled because they said all lives matter or something silly like that. And other things that you could do on your own. Really, these exercises, you can do it on your own. All of these programs are a testament to two words. Does anyone know what they are? Quick guess so that we can finish on time, inshallah. All of them are a testament to self-discipline. Self-regulation, that's a good guess. All of it is a testament to self-discipline. When you have this guy on the screen jumping and sweating and saying, you can do it, it just makes you feel motivated to do it, right? But it really comes down to self-discipline. Self-discipline is what is required in order to actually exercise. Self-discipline is what is required in order for you to actually, be fit, to change your diet. You just have to have the self-discipline. Yeah, it's easy when you have people doing it with you, but it's better if you can find the strength within yourself. So people go vegetarian, like Shiza had mentioned. People go vegetarian, people go vegan, but really the goal is to cut out the meat, the excess. Cut out these excessive things that are taken away from your good health. So key reflections when it comes to spiritual fitness are 4. Bodies don't change overnight and neither do souls. Take your time when it comes to your spiritual fitness, okay? And it's a lifelong journey, so don't make that an excuse. Yeah, it's gonna take, I spent my whole life getting character. True, but don't make that an excuse for why you can't start today, because you are gonna have to start at some point or it will be too late. Not every diet plan or exercise routine works for everyone. You have to find what works for you. Start with tahajjud, start with qiyam, start with fasting, start with Quran, start with something. And there's never any time, so time has to be made. So make the time to be physically fit. There's never any time for anything. I don't have time to work out. I don't have time to do this extra acts of worship. I need to get my sleep, brother. How are you going to tell me to pray qiyam layl, blah, 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 blah. Make the time. You have to make the time. You make the time to study for school, right? You make the time to go to work. You make the time to eat, you make the time to sleep, you make the time to take a shower, to iron your clothes, to clean up your house, inshallah. You make the time for all these things. Make the time to be spiritually fit. Because at the end of the day, regardless of if it's physical well-being or spiritual well-being, the thing that we're supposed to take beyond Ramadan is the mentality that made us do that for 30 days. For 30 days you fasted. Take that with you. Do you know how much mental fortitude it takes to fast? For 30 days, sunrise to sunset, that takes a lot. So keep that same energy, keep that same strength, and take it with you beyond Ramadan. That's what it's all about, team. Last point. Any type of fitness, physical or spiritual, it starts in the mind. It starts in the mind. You're not going to just be able to get up and just start doing stuff and be consistent with it. You have to put it in there first. And we put a lot of things in our mind that we do. I got to respond to this person on Twitter. I got to like, subscribe, follow. I got to watch my new subscription on YouTube. This new thing came out. I got to get the new PS5. We put a lot of stuff in our mind and we move forward with those thoughts. We turn those thoughts into action. What are you willing to do to be spiritually fit? Because the truth is, last point, if your soul is weak, your body will be weak, even if it's strong. And if your relationship with Allah is weak, everything that you have a relationship with in this dunya will be weak, even if you think it's strong. So start by cultivating a strong relationship between you and Allah by finding the diet and exercise, the diet plan and the exercise routine that works for you. What I do, you can't. What you do, maybe I can't. And inshallah, I'm gonna read this quote to you. Read this quote to you by Imam Malik. Abdul Bagh reported that Abdullah ibn Abdul Aziz wrote to Imam Malik, rahimahullah, encouraging him to isolate himself for worship and discouraging him from the gatherings of knowledge. Imam Malik, he wrote back to him saying, Allah Almighty has distributed good deeds just as he has distributed provision. A man may have the way of prayer open for him, but the way of fasting is unopened. Another may have the way of sadaqah, of charity, open for them, but they may not have the way of fasting open for them. Another may have, this is Imam Malik during his lifetime, Islam means peace. Another may have the way of jihad open for him, but the way of prayer is not open. The spreading of knowledge and teaching, it is amongst the best of the deeds. I am pleased with what Allah has opened for me of it. I do not suspect that I have in it lesser than what you have of it. I hope that each of us are upon good. It is necessary for each person among us to be pleased with what Allah has distributed for us. Now, I want you to understand clearly, this statement of Imam Malik is not an excuse for you to not pray because you give charity. It's not an excuse for you to not fast because you pray. It's not an excuse, but rather what someone is strong in is different than what other people are weak in. And what Allah had allotted for each and every single one of us as points of strength is different. For some people, they may be able to recite the Quran. For other people, they struggle with it. For some people, they may be able to seek knowledge. For other people, they may find it very, very difficult. For other people, it's easy for them to be generous. For other people, it's easy for them to get up for Qiyam al-Layl. For other people, it's easy for them to pray their sunnah. But all of that is within what Allah had decreed for each of us. What becomes our goal is to pursue vigorously what Allah had opened up for us and to do our best in the areas that we struggle. So I believe Yusuf had asked the question earlier. I'm pretty sure it was you, Yusuf, where he said, is it better to worship Allah with patience or is it better to worship Allah with sabr? Both are good. It just depends. It just depends. Both are good though. Because in the Quran, Allah said He is with the sabirin. He's with the people who are who are patient in the face of calamity, and patient with regards to worship. But worshiping Allah with rida should be the goal that we all move towards. Because a person who worships Allah with rida is someone who is also trying to perfect their ihsan. the excellence of their worship. So now they're no longer doing it because they believe it's obligatory or in order to submit to what Allah had said, but because they're seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure in this life and the next. So I hope that clarified the question for you. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us spiritually fit. We ask Allah to make us physically fit. We ask Allah to make us mentally fit. We ask Allah to make us emotionally fit. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us al-afiyah in all of our affairs. We ask Allah to grant us al-falah in all of our affairs. We ask Allah to grant us yusra in all of our affairs. We ask Allah to give us the tawfiq in all of our affairs. We ask Allah to make us the emblems and standard for justice in our home, in our community, and in our society. We ask Allah to make us the vanguards and the flag bearers of Islam on this earth with our loved ones, with our non-Muslim neighbors, classmates, co-workers, friends. We ask Allah to give us the strength to be firm upon this deen. Allahumma ameen. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that there will come a time in this ummah where holding on to your deen will be like holding on to a hot coal. The hadith is in Sunan. And it takes strength to hold on to the deen in these times. So be strong and hold on to the deen. Hold on to the rope of Allah, which is the Quran. And most importantly, hold on to each other. Because honestly, at the end of the day, we are all we got. So we ask Allah to make our unity strong. Allahumma ameen. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.